Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're tackling a legal case.
Oh, this one's juicy.
Yeah, it's a doozy, straight from the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. The case of Sheldon v. Seraphim.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this one.
Yeah, and it gives us a look into, like, a separation that is just so contentious.
Oh, it's messy.
Yeah, it makes, like, your average soap opera look totally tame.
Yeah, it's a total real-life drama playing out in the courtroom.
Totally. And it involves Mark Sheldon and Tashina Seraphim, their parents to two very young boys.
3-year-old London.
Yep, and baby Levi. He's just 2 months old.
Oh, wow.
And what's really striking here is the intensity of the conflict.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It goes way beyond, like, your typical disagreements over custody.
Yeah, you see that a lot.
Right, we're talking about accusations of abuse, manipulation, parental alienation, like...
The whole 9 yards.
Yeah, serious stuff. So in this deep dive, we're going to try to, like, unpack all of it.
Lay it all out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will Mark get the parenting time he's asking for?
Yeah.
What led to this restraining order?
Big questions.
And, like, what does all of this mean for these 2 little boys who are caught in the middle of all this?
Right. They were the ones who matter the most.
Totally. Okay, so let's start with the basics.
Back at the beginning.
Yeah. Mark and Tashina, they started living together way back in 2013.
A while ago.
They got married in 2018, had London in 2021, and then they separated in August of 2023.
Oh, so recently.
Very recently. While Tashina was pregnant with Levi.
Wow, so she's dealing with a newborn and a toddler.
Right.
And a separation.
And navigating this whole separation, it sounds incredibly stressful, right? But here's the twist. For 69 days after they separated,
69 days?
Mark had no in-person contact with London.
Wow.
They did have some video calls, but that lack of, like, physical presence seems to have been a major trigger for him.
I can see how that would be difficult.
Yeah. And that's where this platform called Our Family Wizard comes in.
I've heard of this one.
Yeah. It's supposed to help separated parents communicate and document exchanges. But in this case, it kind of became a digital battleground.
Oh.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The judge's decision hinges a lot on the content of messages sent through this platform.
Makes sense.
But only Mark gave those messages to the court.
Oh, so we're only seeing one side?
Exactly. We're only getting Mark's version of events.
Okay, so let's hear it.
Okay, let's dive into those messages because they are intense.
I bet.
He does not hold back. At one point, he calls Tashina's father filth.
Oh, wow.
And says that the kids aren't safe with her or her parents.
That's harsh.
And then there's this one message where he just flat out tells her, "You are the worst thing to happen to me." Like, talk about cutting.
Yeah, that's gotta hurt.
It goes beyond just angry words, though.
Oh, there's more.
There's this pattern of manipulation and blame shifting. He's fixated on not being there for Levi's birth.
Even though they were separated.
Right, even though he knew about the C-section date.
Yeah.
And then he keeps saying that he won previous legal battles.
Like he's keeping score.
Yeah, and the court record shows that's just not true at all.
So not a reliable narrator.
It's like he's trying to make himself out to be the victim.
Yeah, classic.
Constantly accusing Tashina of trying to alienate him from London.
But what about Tashina's side of the story?
Well, there's this incident where Tashina says that Mark said something to London at an exchange.
Oh, like whispered something?
Something like, "Remember what I said about Paul?" Okay. And she actually overheard it because she was right there with London.
He didn't even try to hide it.
And then when she asked London about it later, Mark accused her of being the alienating one.
That's messed up.
It's like
gaslighting,
yeah.
Trying to make her doubt her own memories.
It's incredibly manipulative, and it's often a tactic used in coercive control.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
And there's so much more in these messages.
Oh, lay it on us.
Mark seems to have just a totally skewed perspective on everything. He blames Tashina for London's, like, typical toddler behavior.
Like what?
Like grinding his teeth, not having regular bowel movements.
Come on.
I know. And then he claims to have PTSD triggered by limited contact with his sons. But he doesn't give any documentation or details about treatment.
So we're just supposed to take his word for it.
And remember, we're only seeing his side because those were the messages he chose to submit.
Right. We don't have her responses.
So what we're left with is this really one-sided account from a father who seems angry, manipulative, and potentially unstable.
Yikes.
But what about the mother's experience? What does she have to say about all of this?
Well, in her testimony, Tashina paints like a very different picture of Mark's behavior.
Okay.
She describes him as volatile and unpredictable. Someone who, like, yells and swears, even in front of London.
Wow. That's really concerning. You're talking about a 3-year-old witnessing this kind of behavior from his father.
Right.
It's hard to imagine the impact that could have.
Exactly. And Tashina also describes instances of what she calls like alienating behavior.
Okay.
Like Mark telling London not to touch her during exchanges. Or like whispering things to him that she can't hear.
Oh.
And it's not just what happens during those exchanges. Tashina even describes incidents of road rage and distracted driving while she and London were in the car with Mark.
So she's experiencing this behavior firsthand, both with and without the kids present. It sounds like she's genuinely afraid for her safety and the children's well-being.
Yeah, and that fear seems to be like at the core of her request for a restraining order.
Right.
She doesn't want Mark to have any contact with her or the children except during supervised visits.
That's a pretty serious request. What does the judge have to say about all this? How does she reach her decision?
Well, the judge's ruling is fascinating because it directly addresses those accusations of emotional abuse and manipulation.
Yeah.
She actually cites excerpts from the Divorce Act,
Okay.
which is the law governing separation and divorce in Canada,
Right.
which explicitly says that the court must consider any family violence and its impact, including a pattern of coercive and controlling behavior when figuring out the best interests of a child.
Okay. Let's unpack that a bit. What did those terms actually mean in this context?
Okay, so think of it this way. Coercive control is like someone slowly draining the air out of your tires every night.
Okay.
You might not notice it at first, but eventually you'll be stranded.
Yeah.
It's all about like gradually eroding someone's autonomy and independence.
Wow.
And that's what the judge decided was happening here. Mark's actions, his words, his behavior, they all pointed to family violence in the form of emotional and psychological abuse, as well as coercive control.
So the judge is connecting Mark's actions to this bigger conversation about coercive control.
Right.
And she's saying, this is a form of abuse and we're not going to tolerate it.
Exactly. It's a real shift in how family courts are handling these types of disputes.
Absolutely. So what does all this mean for Mark and Tashina, and most importantly, for London and Levi?
So the judge issued a temporary order with some pretty specific conditions. Mark gets supervised parenting time at a designated facility, and he has to pay for it. Tashina retains primary care and has sole decision-making authority for both children.
And of course, there's the restraining order against Mark, prohibiting any contact with Tashina and the kids except during those supervised visits.
It's a big ruling. It sends a clear message. The court is putting the safety and well-being of both the mother and the children first.
Yeah.
But the question is what happens next? What are the long-term effects for this family?
Right, because this is just the beginning. This ruling is just a snapshot in time. But these two little boys are going to be growing up in this environment of conflict. What kind of impact could that have on their development and their relationships with both parents?
Yeah, that's the real tragedy here.
Yeah.
These children are caught in the middle of their parents' battle, and there are no easy answers. It's a really complex situation, and it raises a lot of questions about the lasting effects of high conflict separation, especially when you have these allegations of abuse.
Yeah, it really makes you think about, like, the bigger picture, right? We're not just talking about one family here.
No, not at all.
This case shows us the challenges that so many families deal with when they're going through separation, conflict, and allegations of abuse.
It's a tough reality for a lot of people.
And one of the big takeaways here is that abuse isn't always physical.
Right. That's so important to remember.
Coercive control, like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It can be really damaging.
Absolutely.
It's insidious.
Yeah, it's like a slow burn.
Exactly.
Just chipping away at someone's sense of self until they feel totally trapped.
And powerless.
Powerless, exactly.
Yes.
And it can be hard to spot.
Oh, yeah.
Because it can look like someone's just being caring or protective.
Right.
But the impact is real.
It is.
This case also shows how important the courts are in protecting people.
Especially kids.
Especially children, right?
Right.
In these high conflict situations.
Yeah, they need that protection.
The judge's decision to issue a restraining order and require supervised parenting time.
Yeah.
It shows a real commitment to safety and well-being.
For sure. It shows that the system is evolving.
Right.
You know, it's not perfect.
Yeah. But it's getting better at recognizing and addressing these really complicated situations with domestic violence and coercive control.
And we can't forget about technology and the role it played here.
Oh, yeah. Our family wizard, front and center.
Right. That platform gave us this digital record of Mark's behavior.
All the receipts.
Which ended up being really important evidence for the judge.
It's a reminder that what we do online has consequences.
Big time.
Especially in family law cases.
It's like a cautionary tale almost, right?
Yeah.
We need to think about our digital footprint because you never know when those texts, emails, social media posts.
Right. It's all out there.
It could come back to haunt you.
It's all documented.
But it also makes you think about privacy. and the potential for things to be misinterpreted.
Well, for sure. Context is everything.
Right. While digital evidence can be useful, it's super important to be fair to everyone involved.
Absolutely.
Wow, this deep dive has been a real journey.
It has.
We started with this court case, and we ended up talking about some really big issues.
You're like coercive control.
The role of technology.
Domestic violence.
It's amazing how one case can spark these important discussions.
It is. So as we wrap up,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all this?
I hope this deep dive has made everyone think more critically about these issues.
Yes.
And maybe be more aware of the signs of abuse.
Not just in their own lives.
Right? Not just in your own relationships, but in the lives of people around you, too.
Exactly. Because knowledge is power.
Totally. And by understanding these dynamics,
Right.
we can help create safer and healthier environments for families.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And remember, if you or someone you know is going through something like this, you're not alone.
Yeah.
There's help out there.
Absolutely. Reach out to someone you trust.
Yeah.
A friend, a family member, a professional.
There is support available, and there is hope.
Thank you all so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a fascinating and thought-provoking one.
As always.
We'll see you next time.
Stay curious and keep learning.